So what actually causes variation? Why are you different from your sibling? Or why are humans different from each other? What can be blamed for the main differences that exist between individual organisms? Well, that is the discussion we're having today. You see, it turns out that people differ in their genotype, and that is what is responsible for the variation that we see. I take that again. People differ in their genotype. So the answer to the question, what causes variation? One aspect of the answer is the difference that exists in our genotype. Well, what do we mean by genotype? You see, everybody has some set of genetic information he or she received from his parents. That set of genetic information constitutes the person's genotype. And the genotypes influence what we see, which we call the phenotype, which is the physical expression of the genotype. So your genotype influences your phenotype. Well, it turns out that this genotype that we are speaking about, to understand it better, we need to understand what the gene is. You see, assume this is our chromosome. We have alternative form of a chromosome known as an allele. Now, on each allele, there are sections of alleles known as genes that are responsible for specific characters that we see in individuals. For example, we can have a character for eye color and hair color. This specific region on the gene that is responsible for the hair color or the eye color of individuals are not the same across individuals. So we can have someone that on his allele, his or her allele, the gene responsible for the hair color codes for black hair. And there's someone whose own codes for blonde hair. On the same gene or on the same chromosome, we have a gene responsible for eye color that codes for maybe black eye. But for a different person, it codes for a brown or a blue eye. So what exactly is a gene? A gene is just a section of a DNA that makes one kind of protein. And the kind of protein that is made influences the character that we see in the person. So getting back to this section that codes for a particular protein is what we are referring to as the gene. And the protein that is made influences the character that we see. And trust me, the probability of forming a different kind or a flavor of character is extremely wild. So as a recap, what causes variation? Well, it's simply because people differ in their genotype. And when it comes to sexual reproduction, the gene responsible for a particular character that we see, maybe eye color or hair color or even blood type, all of these being controlled by our gene, the probability of forming a different flavor is really wild. Mind you, not only humans have their genotype influencing their physical expression or their phenotype. Plants also do the same, and animals also do. So let's take a close look at this. This cattle. Now, you would see that this doesn't have a horn. Meanwhile, this has a horn. This is controlled by the gene. So the presence or absence of a particular gene will make this cow have a horn or not. This is also a cause of variation. So what is our main takeaway? What causes variation? The first is the genotype of the person or the living thing in question. When it comes to plants also, one case of study is the pea plant. Some of them have smooth seeds and others have wrinkled seed. Wrinkled seed. The smoothness of a seed or the seed appearing to be wrinkled depends on the genotype. As simple as that. There is also a different factor that influences the physical expression of an individual, and that is the environment. So now we've gotten two factors. We have the genotype and the environment. What does that mean? Well, you can be born with the potential to be tall. You can be born with the potential to be tall. But if your environment is not favorable, you might end up being short. So for example, someone is born with the potential to be tall, but because of poor nutrition and the diet, malnutrition, the person ends up not reaching his or her full potential. For that, it has nothing to do with genotype. So in the genetic makeup of the person, there is that potential to reach that height, but the environment limits the person. So imagine two children or two kids, one born into a rich family and a well-to-do country that is thriving so well, and another born into a war-prone zone area where they do not even have access to good food and water supply. What do you think could be the outcome of these two children? They might have the same potential to achieve a certain physical state, but the difference in the environment will influence their end result that we see. Another specific example that comes in mind in the plant world, tree. This is a bonsai pine tree. This is also a bonsai pine tree. But this bonsai pine tree happens to be dwarfed. Why? Because it is grown in a small pot. This is also a bonsai pine tree, but happens to grow to be giant simply because it is grown in its natural environment where it has access to a lot of space, a lot of water, a lot of nutrients. So in summary, you can have all what it takes to be excellent, to have an amazing physical expression, but where you find yourself can limit your potential. So that is where we can say that the genetic or the physical expression or appearance of an organism is influenced by the nature, what the persons acquire genetically, and the nature, the upbringing or the environment of the living thing. So what have we discussed so far? It's a summary. What have we discussed? Well, if you look at what actually causes variation, it has to do with our genotype and our environment. So check your environment to see if that is your full potential you are actually getting to. And then we have our gene playing a significant role, and the genes are sections of DNA that makes one kind of protein, and the kind of protein that is made tells us the character will exhibit physically.